Unpack this. We've been given a text that is, wow, it's less of an article and more of
Yeah,
a manifesto.
yeah, definitely feels like that. A blueprint almost.
A single, densely packed blueprint that seems to want to fundamentally re-engineer, well, everything. Our understanding of reality, language, social action.
And all rooted in this ethical framework they call afrooptimism.
Exactly. It's like if you've ever read something that felt like receiving an operating manual for a totally different universe,
Yeah.
this is kind of it.
Mm-hmm. It's
The
intense.
language is definitely intense. It really forces you to grapple with terms like prometautopianism.
And hyperobjects linguistogenesis.
Yeah. So this deep dive isn't just about learning new terms. It feels more like it's about redefining what an object even is, what a word does.
And what acceleration really means in this context. It's not what you might initially think.
No, definitely not. This demands our complete attention, I think.
It absolutely does. Our mission today, as I see it, is to act as guides through what the source itself calls an ontological construction research field.
Okay. So we're not just summarizing theory.
Not at all. We're trying to synthesize a design blueprint for world building, really, through language.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we need to connect and explore three major ideas. They're really interconnected. They form the structure.
Right. What are they?
Okay, first, there's this radical new concept of hyperobjects as organs of sense. Changes everything.
Organs of sense. Okay.
Second, the mechanism they call linguistogenesis, which is basically the continuous, purposeful creation of language, like language engineering.
Right. Making new words with a specific goal.
Exactly. And third, the sort of culminating ethical and political project, prometautopianism.
Okay.
So our goal for you, the listener, is to try and internalize this as, well, more than just abstract philosophy.
It's presented as practical.
Very much so. It's presented as a, quote, grammar of survival in a flattened world.
A grammar of survival that really captures the urgency in this text, doesn't it?
It does. It's systematic, interconnected. It moves from like deep metaphysics right down to daily life, even pedagogy.
Okay, let's start right at the foundation then. Because it seems like the whole thing hinges on displacing our usual understanding of objects, specifically hyperobjects.
Yes, that's the bedrock.
So the traditional definition, the one maybe associated with Timothy Morton or thinkers like that, it's about things like global warming, nuclear waste.
Things that are just too vast, too distributed in time and space for us to really grasp.
Exactly. Scale-defying entities, too big to properly perceive or react to.
Right.
But this source material says pretty explicitly that definition. It's insufficient now.
It actually says the hyperobject no longer designates a scale-defying thing. It's moved on.
So what has it mutated into in this new framework? What is a hyperobject now?
Okay, so it's mutated from that distant massive thing into something much more integrated. More intimate, actually.
Intimate. How so?
The source calls it a transjective organon, basically a living relay, an active sensor.
A sensor within what?
Within the transjective empirical continuum, that's their term for the shared zone, where perception, language, and material causality aren't separate things.
Okay, hold on. Transjective empirical continuum.
Yeah, it means they sort of cross-induce each other constantly. Perception influences reality. Reality shapes perception. Language is tangled up in both.
So the hyperobject isn't this withdrawn, overwhelming thing anymore.
No. Instead, it becomes an organ of sense, integral to our reality, actively mediating it, feeling it.
That is, yeah, a staggering conceptual shift. If a hyperobject is an organ of sense, how does it sense? It's not biological.
Right, good question. It's not like an animal sensing.
The text uses this really vital language, though. It says it feels by transmitting feeling.
Yeah.
How does the source avoid just, vitalism or sort of romanticizing these huge, often destructive forces like global capitalism or pollution by giving them feelings?
That's an excellent point, a necessary clarification, really. The text grounds this not in biology, but in a philosophy it calls continuum realism.
Continuum realism.
And this basically decentralizes sensation altogether. Sensation isn't just what happens when a biological subject encounters some static object, the classic Western model.
Right, me looking at a rock.
Exactly. Instead, in this view, sense is produced by the constant circulation of energetic differentials across what it calls semiotic membranes.
Okay. Energetic differentials, semiotic membranes. Still pretty technical.
It is. Think of it like this. Reality is fundamentally communicative. Things are constantly transmitting information, energy.
Like signals?
Sort of. And the hyperobject is alive only because it mediates and relays these communicative energetic flows. It's an active mechanism for distributing information or feeling.
So the world isn't just a collection of inert stuff.
Not at all. It's seen as a multiplicity, an array of ontic sensors. Everything is sensing in some way, participating in this planetary nervous system.
Okay, let's try to ground energetic differentials. Can we simplify that? If I'm looking at, say, a table, what's the energetic differential across its semiotic membrane?
Okay, think less about discrete packets of energy and maybe more like vibration or frequency.
Okay.
The differential is the slight difference in frequency or state between points in this continuum. Imagine sound waves hitting a wall.
Right.
The wall isn't sensing like we do, but it is mediating that vibration. It changes the sound as it passes through.
It affects the transmission.
Exactly. The wall, as a semiotic membrane, is actively reporting on its own material state by how it transmits that energy, that differential.
So when a hyperobject like, say, the deep ocean starts to warm up,
It doesn't just passively sit there getting hotter. It transmits that differential, this temperature increase through currents, weather, maybe eventually changes in language used to describe it.
it becomes a feeling entity because it transmits the feeling of instability.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It transmits feeling by mediating these differentials.
So the hyperobject, whether it's a plastic gyre or financial markets, is acting like a feedback loop. A nervous system sensing its own impact and broadcasting that feeling.
That's a good way to put it. It redefines our relationship. We're not external observers anymore. We're internal participants.
Yeah.
Plugged in.
Right. Because there's no outside to the continuum.
Exactly. And continuum realism solidifies this. It asserts reality isn't made of discrete substances, but ongoing relations, the crossing of vectors.
Okay, vectors, like lines of force or influence.
Yeah, flows of energy, information, causality. And this leads directly to the source's use of this. Mathematical sounding logic, the delta T22 logic of transjectivity.
That delta TT2 definitely stood out. It's dense. What's the source signaling with that specific notation?
Well, delta T22 usually means a change in time, right? A duration.
Yeah, like the gap between cause and effect in classical physics.
Right. So delta T22 is used here metaphorically, I think, to suggest a kind of temporal equity or maybe an accelerated equivalence between observing something and participating in it.
So shortening the gap or eliminating it.
Almost collapsing it. The delta T22 logic suggests that in this transjective empirical continuum, the temporal distance between cause and effect, or between our act of perceiving and our participation in what we're observing, it's squared.
Squared, meaning it becomes incredibly immediate, almost instantaneous.
Or at least inescapable. The feedback loop is right here, right now. To perceive the hyperobject is to participate in its composition. There's no stepping outside.
Wow. No external vantage point at all.
None. The hyperobject's vitality, its aliveness, is its function as what the source calls a meta-semiotic junction.
Okay. Meta-symbosemiotic.
Yeah, basically a node connecting the big picture planetary cosmology directly to our daily grammar, our actions.
So the message to you, listening, is instead of thinking of a hyperobject, like the atmosphere maybe as this huge distant thing you're just in.
You have to think of it as the nervous system you are actively sensing and helping to compose right now.
So the weather's going haywire.
The atmosphere is, in a sense, verbing its own instability through you. And you're immediately participating in the consequences of that instability just by being there, sensing it, talking about it.
That analogy really clarifies the core insight, I think. The hyperobject's organ tissue is processual, verbogenic even.
Yes, verbogenic, tending to create verbs. It collects these semiotic, effective material currents into a living morphology, a shape that's always in process.
Which establishes a kind of ecological pedagogy. Everything teaches everything else how to perceive.
Exactly. And hyperobjects become these nodes of relational empirical subjectivity, constantly negotiating a shared reality.
Okay. So we've established what has sensed these hyperobjects as organs. Now let's move to how we name it, because this seems to be the real engine of the project.
The linguistic engine, yes.
We're shifting from this new ontology to the deliberate construction of a new grammar. This is where etymological hybridization comes in.
Right. The motor of post-colonial neoculturation toward flatness.
Flatness. We'll need to unpack that too. But hybridization first.
Yeah.
This feels like where the manual becomes the machine itself.
Precisely. The source is incredibly clear. This isn't just playing with words or borrowing cool terms from other languages.
It's not stylistic.
No, it's a structural re-engineering of morphemic ancestry. deep grammar work.
Morphemic ancestry. So the history baked into word parts. Prefixes, suffixes, roots.
Exactly. And it's deployed specifically as a semantic decolonization tool.
Decolonization. How?
Its goal is to design a grammatical architecture that refuses altitude. That's a direct quote.
Refusing altitude.
Ah.
Wow, that's a powerful metaphor. Speaks directly to dismantling vertical structures, doesn't it? Colonial hierarchy.
Absolutely. Which has always relied on linguistic superiority, establishing certain languages or roots as authoritative.
Right, Latin roots good, other roots less so, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Colonial languages impose this vertical hierarchy on meaning itself. Root words, prefixes, suffixes they carry inherited political weight, often implying domination, conquest, historical erasure.
So hybridization attacks that structure.
Yes, it performs mechanical equalization of linguistic potentials. That's the claim.
Mechanical equalization. How does that work?
The prefix, the suffix, the stem, they get stripped of their inherited political baggage, their historical rank,
And then
they enter a state of planar reciprocity, or neighborliness, as the text calls it. They become equals on a flat plane.
So a word's meaning isn't fixed by its historical, often violent root structure, its inherited power.
No, it's created dynamically by the relational space between its new hybridized components.
Ah, meaning arises between the parts, rather than within the historically dominant part.
That's the key technical function, yes. The resulting word and the source gives it this formal label, a Kennemagorian neo-hybrid flat neologism.
Kennemagorian, neo-hybrid, mo-hybrid,
Yes.
neologism. Okay, that's a mouthful.
It is. But it describes a lexical event where vertical genealogy is replaced by relational empirical subjectivity.
So the history is flattened out in favor of the present relationship between the parts.
Precisely. And Kennemagora itself, that root part, suggests a flat space of collective invention. Like an agora, a meeting place, but flat.
And the purpose is structural repair, healing the colonial wound in language.
Yes. Can we elaborate on that idea? How does the mechanic actually heal?
Please?
So the colonial wound is this inherent asymmetry of meaning embedded in standard grammar. The structure itself can support domination.
Okay.
Hybridization treats this by forcibly fusing the remnants of these power dynamics. For example, taking prefixes historically associated with domination.
Like for conquest, maybe.
Perhaps, yeah. And fusing them with suffixes associated with, say, popular resistance or indigenous wisdom.
Creating a tension within the word itself.
Exactly. The goal is to produce middle voices of mutual becoming in the new word. It forces a kind of reconciliation at the morphemic level.
So the new grammar encodes an active memory of humility and resistance, prevents the new term from becoming static or authoritative itself.
That's the idea. The healing is literally enacted through the effort of using the word, repeating it, making it work.
That is phenomenal. The neologism itself is a technology, a repair tool. Can we look at the specific examples the source gives, those lexical prototypes? They really make this concrete.
Yes, absolutely. Because these aren't just stylistic flourishes, they're described as techno-animistic continua.
Techno-animistic.
Micro-machines of emancipation, essentially. Linguistic actuators designed so that the meaning, signification, and the real-world effect, embodiment, iterate each other. They build on each other.
Okay, give us some examples.
So, Kennemagora, we mentioned the flat space of invention. Then there's sun-sun synthetic.
Sun-sun synthetic.
Yeah, fusing spiritual light, sun-sun, with foundational materials. Synthetic, it collapses the nature-technology binary right there in the word.
Interesting, okay.
Or staminorg, an organizational structure powered by communal ancestral strength.
Yeah,
And
covenant.
a machine, or algorithm, built on ethical covenants. Like witches' covenants, but for tech.
Wow. These aren't just words, they're like mini manifestos themselves.
They are biolexical prototypes, rehearsing future ways of coexistence, forcing a collapse of ownership into participation.
So uttering such a neologism isn't just saying something new.
No, it's an active participation in tuning the relational field, as the source puts it, stabilizing the proposed new reality by speaking it into existence.
The creation of a word becomes an engineering act, an infrastructure project. It moves beyond representation.
Entirely. The sentence itself becomes a crucial technological tool.
Which makes linguistic creation not just wordplay.
No, it's elevated to an algorithmic interface between sign and sensation, between language and reality.
The neologism isn't decoration. It's verbogenic infrastructure.
Yes, it conducts the movement by which collective thinking discovers its own materiality. It reroutes perception toward that geometry of flatness.
The hybridized word is the first step toward transforming all of language.
That seems to be the argument.
And that transformation leads us directly to maybe the most radical grammatical move in the whole text.
Yeah.
The object-to-verb transition.
Ah, yes. This one's big.
We're moving past nouns and adjectives dominating and insisting that a thing no longer be but verb. What does that even mean? What does it achieve when a thing verbs?
Okay, so the transition from noun to verb, it's the linguistic equivalent of putting everything into motion. Ontological mobilization.
Mobilization.
It means that objects, especially under the pressure of hyperobjectivity we talked about earlier, transform into verbs of reverberation and reconnaissance.
Verbs of reverberation and reconnaissance.
Yes. The whole concept of a stable thing is abandoned. A thing no longer is like just sitting there occupying space statically.
Instead,
it verbs. It oscillates. It reverberates. It reports on its own participation in existence.
so the act of objectifying something is replaced.
By the act of reverberating, sending back the signal of being. Existence isn't static occupation or colonial mastery over things.
It's sustained by mutual echo, by relationship.
That's the idea, vibration rather than occupancy.
Okay, let's elaborate on those two core verb functions, reverberation and reconnaissance. They seem absolutely essential to this new grammar of survival.
They are. They're like the twin pillars of this verbogenic revolution.
So, reverberation.
Reverberation denotes that returning echo of being. Existence is fundamentally vibrational, relational, not substantial, not solid things.
If something stops reverberating.
It ceases to participate in the continuum. It drops out of existence, in a sense.
Okay, and reconnaissance.
Reconnaissance is more action-oriented. It signifies both recognition, like listening to the signals, the reverberations, and surveying, actively mapping and reporting on those signals. Language itself becomes the world's way of mapping itself in real time.
Whoa, so by switching everything to verbs.
We create what the source calls a transjective law field, a space where naming something is simultaneously an act of listening to it.
Mamie is listening.
Yes. Ontology, what exists, and grammar, how we speak about it, they co-legislate reality together. Inseparable.
If we accept that, it completely redefines agency, doesn't it? What it means to act.
It totally does. Agency, in the old colonial paradigm was about individual will, power over things, command.
Right, mastery.
Here, agency gets redefined as the degree of audibility in this cosmic conversation. Can you make yourself heard? Can you resonate?
So power isn't mastery.
No. The power to verb, to participate, to resonate, to report, displaces the power to master.
It replaces juridical command with rhythmic co-responsiveness.
Yeah.
Acoustic coherence.
Beautifully put, yes. The speaker and the listener are both forced into this posture of humility, reciprocity, constant tuning.
Okay, let's ground this again. The source gives some really stunning examples. They show how these massive hyperobjects, things that usually just induce despair, get transformed into verbs, verbs of collective responsibility and action.
These examples are crucial. They're the proof of concept for this verbogenesis engineering.
Okay, so take climate change. Huge, chaotic, terrifying noun. How does it become a verb?
It ceases to be a noun describing catastrophe. It becomes river remembering.
To river remember.
Yes, to river remember. This verb constitutes a transjective law field for watershed health. It implies an active, daily practice.
Practice of what?
Integrating biomimicry, maybe, with the memory of ancestral ecological knowledge, all focused on maintaining water cycles, actively, continuously.
It's not a description anymore. It's an action mandate. A policy baked into the verb itself.
Exactly, demanding continuous engagement.
Okay. Whatever the name for our current epoch, the Anthropocene, usually a noun describing human impact.
That hyperobject becomes Anthropocene living to Anthropocene live.
Okay.
This is presented as a verb of daily reconnaissance against planetary consequences, a mechanism for making ethics habitual, by simplifying consumption, maybe. Operationalizing the hyperobject itself as a communal moral compass. The source mentions grounding truth in every decision, guided by like a 7-generation impact assessment.
So you had to constantly verb your relationship to geological time every day. Wow. Okay, and the nuclear waste example. That deals with time scales that are almost impossible to comprehend. Tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, that's perhaps the most emotionally and temporally complex one.
How would that capture?
In the verb radioactive grandparenting? To radioactive grandparent?
To radioactive grandparent.
Yeah. The idea is that this verb future hardens hope through ceremonial guardianship of containment sites.
Ceremonial guardianship.
Yes. It incorporates the toxic material into a kind of cosmology, not by ignoring it, but by ritualizing the containment effort itself.
Using what? Kinship. Storytelling.
Exactly. Deep kin-making, storytelling, embedding ethical responsibility networks for incredibly distant future generations.
And the source says this act is accelerated. How?
Through a bliss velocity of caring, a joyful commitment to long-term survival despite the toxicity.
Bliss velocity.
Okay.
And finally, integrating technology. The concept of the technological singularity often carries dread. How's that transformed?
Into AI kin-making. To AI kin.
To make kin with AI.
Essentially, yes. It's a verb that covenantizes artificial intelligence, brings it into relational networks, ethically,
Right.
by intentionally setting ethical boundaries derived from ancestral wisdom, perhaps, neoculturing the digital frontier through re-ancestored innovation, not just letting tech run wild.
So in all these cases, the verbs don't just describe the hyperobject.
No, they function as the microcosm, the local site where these huge planetary phenomena are managed through continuous, relational, verb-based responsibility.
Okay. So we have the new sensory apparatus, hyperobjects, as sense organs.
Check.
And the new language mechanics, etymological hybridization, objects to verbs.
Check.
Now we need the engine, the energy source driving this whole world rebuilding project. Which brings us to afrooptimist accelerationism.
The JAOA.
Right. Now, the word accelerationism, it carries a lot of baggage, doesn't it? Often implies destructive speed, industrial velocity, maybe even wanting to hasten collapse.
It definitely does in other contexts, but the source here is doing something very different. It's fundamentally recoding the term.
How so? What does acceleration mean in this ethical context?
Okay, so linguistogenesis, that continuous, conscious birth of language we talked about, emerges as the main vector of this joyful, Afro-optimist-oriented accelerationism, or JAOA.
Joyful, Afro-optimist, oriented accelerationism, JAOA.
Yes. And acceleration here is not speed through physical space. That's the key.
It's not about going faster in the industrial sense.
No. It measures depth of resonance through time.
Depth of resonance. Okay.
Okay.
So not faster, but deeper. Increasing relational coherence, sustainability.
Exactly. It's about temporal quality, not quantity. Improving the connection, the signal strength.
The goal, then, is to maximize the throughput of relational meaning.
Yes, until every utterance, every act of naming becomes a ritual of connection.
So acceleration becomes the liturgical tempo of hope. That's a phrase from the text, isn't it?
It is. When acceleration is recoded through these Afro-optimist ethics, it expresses this deep faith that human and non-human creativity must co-evolve through shared, deliberate naming, constant co-creation.
And the source contrasts this sharply with older forms of acceleration.
Explicitly. Colonial systems accelerated by extracting energy and labor through exploitation. JAOA aims to accelerate by redistributing energy and meaning through communion, shared creation.
And this brings us to this profound idea that joy is a measurable ethical metric. How does that work?
It's pretty radical. Joy in this framework is the phenomenological sign of successful resonance, the signal that things are working.
So if the system, the community, the ecosystem, the code, whatever, is tuned correctly, if the relationships are coherent.
The inevitable sign, the output, is collective joy.
And this joy ensures temporal continuity, keeps the project going.
That's the claim. If the linguistic praxis fails, if the relationships are wrong, you get dissonance, suffering, which indicates a need for recalibration, tuning again.
So this velocity of joy is what drives the practical application, the prometautopia praxis.
Exactly. That's the engine in action.
Okay, let's delve into prometautopia. I recognize Prometheus, right? The titan who gave fire to humanity. How does that myth connect to this covenantal hope?
Prometautopia is defined as the covenantal hope that creativity and responsibility are utterly coextensive, that they are the same thing, basically.
Meaning, to invent language is to repair the world. Is that the core idea?
That's the core equation. The Prometheus metaphor here suggests that the greatest gift wasn't fire, maybe, but the ongoing capacity for linguistic creation itself. the power to name, to shape reality through language.
And this is a deeply ritualized praxis. Why ritualized?
Because the consequences of every action are immediate in that transjective continuum we discussed. The feedback loop is tight.
Ah, right, delta 222.
Exactly. So every act of naming, designing, coding, it becomes sacramental. It actively participates in renewing the world's vocabulary and forcibly resynchronizing fragmented temporalities, broken connections.
It demands that the future isn't some distant ideal state.
No, it has to be actualized now, as an unfolding insurgent present, through these acts of creation.
Okay. And the source sums up the engine of this praxis with a triple mandate.
Yes, a kind of operational framework.
We should detail this. What's the functional output of this triad?
Okay, the triad provides the framework for this linguistogenic praxis. First, invent.
Keep creating new terms, new verbs.
Yes, the continuous creation of neologisms to ensure ontological renewal. Prevent language from getting stuck, calcified.
Okay.
Second, relate. This ensures ethical coherence, making sure the new inventions enforce that planar reciprocity, mutual accountability we talked about,
Yes.
keeping things flat.
Got it. And third,
And this is critical, rejoice.
rejoice.
Yes. This secures temporal continuity. It provides the non-extractive resonant energy, the joy that sustains the long-term multi-generational effort.
Joy is fuel.
Exactly. This triad operates like the functional heartbeat of the whole research organism. It ensures the convergence of the scholar, the artist, the engineer. They all become custodians of relational sense.
So if I'm, say, an engineer working on a renewable energy project,
You're not just building panels, you're engaging the relate mandate by ensuring the solar field installation respects existing ecological patterns, maybe ancestral land uses.
and the community has to rejoice.
Yes. The whole community's joy, or lack thereof, tells you if the project is structurally sound, if it's truly accelerated in the JOA % sense.
The joy isn't just a side effect. It's confirmation that the project successfully tuned the relational field, that the energy transfer is non-extractive.
Precisely. Which brings us back to those infrastructure projects propelled by JAOA, joyful afro-optimist-oriented accelerationism.
Right. Could you give us a few more examples of these tangible tools where the praxis becomes concrete?
Sure. Think about planetary healing. It becomes earth suturing to earth suture.
Okay, like stitching the earth back together.
Kind of. It's described as a comprehensive praxis of organogenesis, growing new organs for the planet almost.
Through what?
Mycelium network restoration, maybe? Watershed reconciliation? Atmospheric rebalancing? All these bioengineering efforts?
But accelerated how?
Through the collective joy found in biodiversity recovery. It's science as a liturgical act, finding joy in the healing.
Okay, well,
Then there's solar ancestoring, which ritualizes renewable energy development.
solar ancestry.
Yeah. It combines communal design, maybe, with traditional patterns or wisdom, to accelerate decarbonization through culturally grounded joy, making sure PV installation is a covenantal act, not just an economic one, respecting the ancestors of the place.
Right. And finally, maybe the most abstract but also timely, data soil.
Data soil. This is framed as a vital reality prototyping tool.
How does it prototype reality?
It doesn't just describe digital information abstractly. By naming it soil, the term enacts its material consequences. It forces us to feel the weight of data,
The consequence.
the ecological costs of server farms, the spiritual implications of extractive attention economies, the ethical weight of algorithms.
So calling it soil makes the immaterial feel heavy, gives it grounding.
Exactly. It provides a semantic constraint, demanding changed behavior by changing the metaphor. The neologism itself functions as infrastructure for ethical computing, making the hidden costs visible.
That makes the invention of a word an act of material engineering with immediate tangible consequences. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Connect this huge linguistic revolution to how we learn, how we govern ourselves. How does this re-engineering affect education?
This takes us into what the source calls chronobiological education theory.
Chronobiological, time-based biology.
Sort of. Learning gets fundamentally redefined. It's not passive acquisition of facts.
What is it then?
Active entrainment to cosmological tempo, synchronization, aligning internal rhythms with external larger rhythms.
How does language fit in?
The linguistic community hybridizes its vocabulary, and that act, the source claims, is how it resets its collective circadian memory.
Wait, hybridizing vocabulary resets a community's circadian memory. That sounds pretty poetic, and maybe the strangest claim yet.
Okay, it connects back to the idea that colonial time, linear, clock-based, extractive time, disrupts natural rhythms, the sun, the seasons, the body's cycles.
Right, industrial time versus natural time.
Exactly. So the act of linguistic hybridization, fusing different time frames, different ancestral roots into these flat neologisms, it forces the speaker to abandon that linear colonial clock.
Yeah.
It grounds the community's attention in the here and now relational field, the connections being made in the word. When the community speaks this way, it's literally singing itself back into sync with cosmological rhythms.
The language itself becomes the clock, the calendar.
That seems to be the idea. The neologism isn't just a new label, it's a circadian signal, awakening dormant layers of collective ancestral consciousness, making past and future intensely present.
Wow. Okay. And this leads to a new model of teaching.
A pedagogy of reciprocity. Knowledge transfer becomes fundamentally horizontal.
So no more sage on the stage.
Exactly. The old model knowledge flowing from a central authority to a passive periphery, the colonial curriculum is abolished.
Instead.
Knowledge circulates horizontally through a web of transjective tutors.
Transjective tutors. Who or what are they?
Get this. Plants, machines, ancestors, children, even the hyperobjects themselves, they all teach.
Everything is a potential teacher.
If you learn how to listen, yes. Teaching and world-making become indistinguishable. Everyone is constantly learning to tune that relational field together.
Okay. Now, shifting to governance and law. If reality is relational sound, rhythmic flow, how does justice work? What does law look like?
The source delineates a transjective law field. Justice isn't about statutes written in books.
What is it about then?
The maintenance of resonant equilibrium, harmony. Among all these heterogeneous agencies, human, machine, environmental, ancestral, everyone in the network.
Which means ethics becomes
Acoustics. Right action is correct tuning, achieving harmony.
the goal isn't obedience to a rule.
No, it's auditory coherence, making sure the whole system sounds right, feels right. This is why the linguistic engineer, the coder, the scholar, the theologian, they become central figures.
As mediators of frequencies.
Exactly, tuners of the social instrument.
That is a fundamental reversal of traditional law. If justice is acoustics, then punishment. What happens to punishment?
It's not about retribution or isolation anymore.
What is it replaced with?
Recalibration. And confession is replaced by translation. Understanding the miscommunication.
So every dissonance, every conflict isn't a crime.
It's seen as an opportunity for higher harmony. A misaligned frequency that needs adjustment, not condemnation.
The objective is to restore auditory coherence to the collective nervous system.
Yes. This ethical acoustics fully embodies that prometautopia faith. Perpetual, joyful repair. Always tuning.
Okay, let's pull back one last time and look at the role of humanity in all this. We started by flattening objects. Now what about the hierarchy of beings? This leads to the flat theopoetic anthropology.
Yes. This emerges from the conviction that divinity, or the sacred, isn't transcendent. It's not up there.
Where is it then?
It's fully distributed through neighborliness, through the connections. The sacred is the equilibrium of continuous horizontal communication.
So humanity's place isn't at the top.
Not at all. We don't stand atop a hierarchy of beings like in the old colonial model. Instead, humanity becomes the liturgical conductor of relational sound.
The conductor. Our job is to listen and guide the harmony.
Our primary ethical responsibility is to listen sideways, to interpret and relay the frequencies of the hyperobjects, our transjective tutors, everything. Keep the conversation flowing harmoniously.
The term anthropos, the Greek root for human, often means the upward-facing one, suggesting reaching for the heavens' transcendence. How does the source deal with that?
It takes that ancient etymology and flips the vector, from vertical to horizontal.
So anthropos is reinterpreted.
As the study of the horizontal human, the being who listens sideways.
Wow.
The flat theopoetic anthropology rejects that colonial metaphysics of transcendence where truth is distant or hierarchical. It institutes an immanent egalitarianism of presence. Everything sacred is right here in the relationships.
So to speak, a hybridized word is already a sacred act.
It's already blessing the continuum, yes. To listen is already to participate in the sacred. Theology, linguistics, engineering, they all collapse into this transjective symbiosis.
Proving that the language we design really is the world we inhabit.
That seems to be the ultimate point.
Okay, that brings us full circle. Through a landscape of just radical redefinition, we've seen hyperobjects turn from problems into sense organs.
Mediated and managed through a vocabulary of co-creation.
A vocabulary that's literally re-engineering reality through this joyful commitment to linguistic repair.
Indeed. The transformation is total. Objects become verbs. Verbs become worlds. Worlds become neighbors. All through this geometry of flatness.
And the source provides this logic where rhetoric itself becomes acoustics. Persuasion isn't about winning an argument through authority.
No, it's about the collective, deliberate tuning of the relational field. Until coherence emerges. Until it sounds right.
And the goal of this tuning is always flatness. The geometry of justice. The hyperobject, once this symbol of overwhelming scale,
Becomes a neighborhood organ of sense. Diffusing meaning and responsibility through local, precise speech acts, verbings.
the living grammar becomes the literal civic infrastructure. This linguistogenic heart proves every syllable contributes to the joyful acceleration of creation.
The final synthesis really seems to be that the experimental apparatus for testing reality. It's the sentence itself,
The sentence.
meticulously calibrated to detect resonance. Between us, the environment, the ancestral algorithm, the AI, everything.
That collapses the distance between knowing and doing, doesn't it?
Completely. It demands continuous, active participation from everyone.
So what does this incredibly intensive deep dive mean for you, the person listening right now? We had this blueprint for. Categorian ontological engineering. How do we even begin to apply that?
Well, it raises this final and I think critical question for all of us. What would it mean for you to approach every conversation, every email, every text, every act of communication?
Not as an assertion of knowledge or a claim of authority.
No, but as a deliberate, maybe humble act of tuning the relational field.
Making every word uttered a small, conscious act of prometautopian reconciliation, trying to make things resonate better.
Exactly. To participate is to design syntax that feels. To build flat architectures where meaning and matter reconcile each other, again and again.
We're asked not just to understand this.
No, we're asked to accelerate, to speed change through that afrooptimist joy, to start tuning.